And so there were 3 different cheeses. There was a soft curd, which is the raw, unaged, little softer of the, it had a little bit of a squeak when you bit through it. Now, that's called a cheese curd. Those from the Midwest know all about them. They're a regular snack food. Out here, they don't exist. So I make, pretty much for my girlfriend and her family, require a couple pounds a week of that. So I'm making cheese curds as fast as I can make them. But it's fun to try to dial those in and to experiment with different moisture contents and so forth. So that was a cheese curd where I pushed the yield about as far as I could go. That was at 13.4%. Around 12 seems to be the little bit harder, a little bit less whey. So that was the curd. There was a light yellow cheese, Leicester, that's named after the city where that style was invented. That's a type of cheddar, a little bit drier than a typical cheddar, less than the 37% that's required by our government. Which, that's a funny story. Do you ever want to know why this country has so much cheddar and mozzarella? Well, the government made a law back in the 1800s that if you had extra, if you were making cheese and you had extra cheddar, the food bank will buy it back from you. So overnight, America turned into a country of cheddar. And mozzarella is a form of cheddar for pizza. So 99% of the cheeses became cheddar, and we kind of stopped evolving like the European cheesemakers. So we find ourselves quite a bit behind the curve. Right now is sort of like what's going on in the cheese world is what happened in the beer world in the mid-'80s when Sierra Nevada and Anchor came back up. We have our wonderful, up in the northern California and the central coast of California, Vermont, Wisconsin, New York, upstate, wonderful artisan cheeses are being made now to put us back on the map as cheesemakers. Cowgirl Creamery up north, Point Reyes, fantastic cheeses, world class. So I thought I'd share that story because it's, again, you know, when money starts dictating what you do as an artist, things change, and not always for the better. So I told this story to my mother, and she said, "Oh, you know, your grandfather had this big warehouse full of cheddar back in the 30s, you know." And I was thinking, oh, okay, he probably caught on to that and was selling it to the government, you know, the food bank. So, yeah, Cheesesmith. I really hope to have that going pretty soon. I have there's a lot of things you have to do. A lot of the rules were put on the books about cheese as a health hazard, and right now we're going through a whole other realm of that. Raw cheeses are, again, under the scrutiny of our government, and they are trying to do away with that, and various cheese boards are fighting it, but there was some outbreaks with some of the larger companies last year with some bacterial contaminations where people got a little ill, and so the government got back in on it, and so we'll see where all this plays out. But what I want is a farm and a cow. My girlfriend knows me, a cow. Because of this limitation of the raw material, now, you know, these cheeses that I served, and I'll describe the last one in a moment, all of these were made from the organic pastures, raw milk, which is available at the supermarkets at rather pricey. But what he feeds those cows comes through in this cheese. And as an artist, I need control of that too. If I want my cows eating plums, they're going to eat plums, and I'm going to see if I can get it to go through into the cheese. If I want to milk this cow at midnight on a full moon, right before Halloween, to make a scary cheese, I want to do that too. You know, it's all about control of your raw material, and now the more I get into cheese making, I'm kind of like, someone's doing all the work for me up to this point, and now, so I really want to get into that realm. And it's sort of like, you know, we all start with extracts, and some people prefer to brew with extracts and this and that, but I think you realize you can get a little bit more control when you start making your own wort through all-grain brewing. And it's kind of the same thing. I almost feel like I'm an extract cheesemaker because I'm buying packaged milk. But that's just the way it has to be. My condo association here in San Diego just won't let me have a cow. I'll try, but... and I guess my grandparents, I remember this story as a kid back in Russia, when they were in Russia, when it would get really cold, they would bring the cow into the house to keep it warm. And so, you know, I think my family has a little history there with those animals. So, okay, so the Leicester was a little bit of a drier cheddar. Now the orange brewhouse cheddar, or style maybe known as a farmhouse cheddar, that is kind of a shortcut cheddar. Cheddar can be a really long day. Typically, cheddaring is a verb. When you cheddar it at a certain point, you have your curds laid in large slabs, and that takes a lot of time, and then you're putting it through this machine or by hand like I do, where you cut them into those curds. And then those curds go into the hoop, and those are pressed into cheddar. So curds are really the starting point. That's why I do make curds on a 3-to-1 ratio as opposed to the pressed cheeses, because I'm trying to perfect that curd. If I can get that curd down, right, then you're well on your way to making better cheeses. So it is orange because of a vegetable-based coloring called annatto. And that was started back in the day, hundreds of years ago in England, just to differentiate that cheese from the other cheddars for tax purposes. Yeah, right? So you see where this, we keep coming back to these money decisions are affecting things. Well, there is no such thing as orange cheese. It just has to be added to it. But maybe I can feed my cow oranges and see if that does something. So, yeah, I'm really anxious to get cows, as you can tell.
10 minutes.
10 minutes, thank you. Okay, so I guess that's really about it. I can take some Q&A. I just wanted to, again, I went into cheese a little bit more than I could ever tell you about it. It's a very lengthy knowledge base, and just like home brewing. And I would like to remind you all, there's always something to learn. I mean, when I go around professionals, brewers, cheesemakers, whatever, my mouth is shut, my ears are open. And there's a lot of information you can gather. And the day you think you know everything, you're pretty much done as an artist, I hate to tell you. You need to learn, and you need to know that the person sitting next to you has something to offer you. And that person in your home brew club that maybe is on his second batch of beer has something to offer you and me. So again, treat each other kind, listen to each other, learn from each other. All these people on this planet, they are all different, and they all have something to offer you. And my bio did mention a few other things I like to do that I'll just touch on real briefly, but if you're into olive curing, the month of September is really good to get those olives. You can Google that and find out that there is a company that will ship these to you wherever you live, and you can get off the ground curing olives. I have jars of them at home going, and it's just, again, another hobby. Chocolate making is a real tough one. That one kind of came and went with me. Wow. That requires a complete immersion into that hobby to really get the chocolates the way you want them, and some kind of expensive equipment. But again, fun to just, you can order the cocoa nibs and process those yourselves in a juicer and get molds and make your own chocolate. And so it's thrilling to show up at parties. I think every home brewer knows that feeling, right? Showing up at a party with your home brew and watching people say it's the best beer they ever had, and it's just a wonderful feeling that you offered someone something satisfying. Mustard making, easy. Easy and hard. You don't have to get it exactly the way you want it, but really, you can make mustard and you can be eating it the very next day, much like baking. I love those hobbies too, because I have some ones where you have to wait. The home brewing, the cheese making, you gotta wait. The baking and the mustard making, instant gratification. So, balance your artistic life with those. And I guess a little bit of Q&A here, and then we're going to wrap it up so Greg doesn't get mad at me here. Yeah, how about right over here?
I heard you are also into coffee roasting.
Coffee roasting, yeah.
So, how did you happen to stumble upon?
Oh, great question, thank you. Speedway Stout is one of our coffees we make at Alesmith, and it has a large amount of coffee, actually 1 pound of beans per barrel of beer is in that. So we all got very interested in brewing. In fact, of my 9 employees, I believe 6 of them home roast. Again, easy hobby to get into, difficult to perfect, but I rarely buy other coffee now. There's you can save a little money buying the beans green, and there's tons of varieties. They offer different characteristics, and then there's all these levels of roasting: city, city plus, full city plus, Vienna, espresso, and so forth. And again, vast amount of knowledge out there. But practice your creativity when you're roasting is when you decide to stop it, the roast. And it's very interesting because there's audible messages for you of what's going on. There's something called the first crack, where you'll actually hear the bean popping, and then about 2.5 to 4 minutes later, you're going to hear what's known as the second crack. At first, they're hard to differentiate. The first one sounds kind of like pop, 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 and the second crack is more like wrinkling of paper, like, you know, like really fast. And when you stop it in proportion to the second crack determines the roast quality. So encourage that one as well. I think I left coffee roasting out. So. Yes, sir.
So one option for home brewers is trading their home brew for local artisan cheeses or honey and so forth. Have you considered doing that on a larger scale?
Oh, okay. Question was, you know, trading your home brews for cheese and this and that. Yeah, actually, the woman at the Rinconada dairy up on the Central Coast makes fantastic cheeses. I send her a box of Alesmith and I get back cheese from her.
Nice.
So yeah, it goes on. I think artists do appreciate each other's work, and it makes for a delicious time too. Yes, sir.
How many varieties of cheese have you made?
Oh, good question. Maybe a couple dozen or so. It's very interesting what makes a particular style of cheese that cheese. And at first, if you do take up the cheese making, don't be flustered that they seem quite similar to the other, just because they have a different name. When you look at the recipes, they look identical. You know, and you have to study to see where the difference is. The same amount of milk, the same amount of bacterial starter, the same amount of enzyme, the same amount of salt. And then you start looking into the temperatures and the times and whether whey is removed and replaced with water to lower acidity or whether that doesn't happen. And all these little minute things is very, very challenging. And at first, all my cheeses seemed exactly the same. I'd say, you know, here's my Swiss, here's my cheddar, you know, they're like exactly the same. I missed something, I didn't do something quite right. So again, very, very procedural, and I gained a tremendous amount of respect for the world's cheesemakers. Just incredible what they're doing. And when you really have a world-class cheese, it's a thing of beauty. And when you learn about these cheesemakers, it's all about the art. Many of them have no idea the rest of the world is outside of their farm. They don't even care. They're in their own little world there. And I think that we all know about that. Isn't that brew day the most zenful, peaceful day you ever have of your week or month? It's just fantastic. You know, turn everything off and just you know, enjoy that Zen experience. Two more questions? Yeah, Darren?
So you're saying pH drop and all that. It's pretty essential to have a pH meter for that? Is that?
Yeah, some of the equipment you'll need for cheese making is important. I have a very sophisticated bench pH meter because you need to read to the 10th. And when you add bacteria to heated milk to get an acidity drop, when you hit it with the enzymatic, what they call rennet, that will determine a type of cheese. So to know that moment is very important. A cheesemaker at Cal Poly told me, you know, never ever make cheese with the calendar or your watch. Candice?
Can you talk about some of the cheese you made with beer?
Oh, yeah. Another similar I should have mentioned, you know, cheese can be made with beer. And we have a Belgian tome-style wheel that I make with goat's milk. I submerge it in our Horny Devil Belgian Golden Strong for a few months. And stylistically, the tome style calls for a mosaic-type pattern. That can be achieved with the use of coriander seeds. So I'm hoping to make that a commercially available cheese as well. Some of the other ones, not so happy with. Beer is a very complex thing to add to milk. And bitterness levels, color, it's very important to control that. Hoppy beer is a challenge for chefs and cheesemakers alike. And while I have just a moment here, I would like to talk about a little bit. I have a culinary director at Alesmith. His name is Skylar Schultz. He's in the room here. He's been helping me. He's over here, Skylar. And writing a book on food and beer pairing that's been picked up by a publisher, so we're very proud of him. And very much a lot of the notes here that I was talking about, the similarities of cheese, I took from Skylar. We talk about this a lot. So again, you know, just want to show that it's not all about one thing. Brewing's great, but there's other arts you can include with this. And books like that are very important as reference points. With, you know, beer and food pairing is incredibly important to Alesmith and to Skylar. And he's really a genius at being behind a lot of the Alesmith dinners that we do at the local restaurants.